We found the needle in the haystack. So hopefully all of this is going to hold together and work tonight. I appreciate you guys being here this evening. So we will watch the second half of this documentary. The second half is story-based. So you're going to get to introduced to some individuals. If you want some of these, we've got enough of these for one per family right now. Over the weeks, we're going to keep adding notes to this, so feel free to grab a binder, and then we'll have notes from week to week. And we'll have more of these binders as well later on as they come in and we get them all prepped and ready to go. And if we have any time afterward, then we'll walk through some of the notes and prepare ourselves for the next week. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to see what happens now. Yeah.
Now, many of the things he was famous for was the line, "There are no little people." In other words, every single one of us counts. We all matter. Everyone made in the image of God. Everyone, everywhere, in everything, it can turn around.
As Oz says, the renewal of a civilization doesn't involve just the powerful. Renewal begins when believers everywhere embrace what's true and have the courage to act. Chloe Cole grew up in Central California. Like so many young people today, Chloe struggled with her identity. And like so many young people today, she sought comfort and companionship online. But what she found there were harmful ideas about who she is.
I had heard the word transgender a few times, but I thought it was just kind of a funny concept, and I didn't really care for it until I was actually seeing it just being presented to my face through my usage of social media. A lot of these users were kids my age, or maybe a little bit older, who identified with the opposite sex or another part of the LGBT community. But it was primarily like these girls who called themselves males. Maybe the reason why I'm so interested in this is because I'm one of them. I wasn't supposed to be a girl. That's why I'm so uncomfortable with myself and my developing female body. I was born with a male brain. Maybe half a year or so of being exposed to this content was when I decided to go all in into transition. And they really drilled it hard into my mom and dad's head that, like, you're gonna have to choose basically between having a live son or a dead daughter. And it's the only choice that they give parents. They say it's transition or die.
Chloe started her transition when she was just 12 years old. First with puberty suppressants and then cross-sex hormones at 13. And at just 15 years old, Chloe underwent a double mastectomy.
I didn't have the clarity or maturity yet to be able to realize that my transition was actually destroying me. I was still very much in the mindset of, okay, maybe I just need to move further then, because I'm not satisfied. I started to wonder, like, what's wrong with me this time? You know, like, I look like a guy, everybody thinks I'm a guy, everybody accepts me, and yet I'm still not happy.
Jack Phillips is a man of family and faith. He served his community for years as a cake artist and small business owner. But in 2012, on a beautiful sunny Colorado day, everything changed. And that's when Jack chose to take a courageous stand.
Two men came in and I sat down with them and asked them, my name's Jack, how can I help you? They said, we're here to look for wedding cakes. The other one said, it's for our wedding. And so I knew what my answer was going to be. I just didn't know how to phrase it or how they would take it. But I told them, I'll make you birthday cakes, shower cakes, sell you cookies and brownies. I just don't do cakes for same-sex weddings, meaning that I'm glad to serve you, but I can't create the cake that you're asking for. You can have anything in my shop. You're welcome here. But I can't create that cake because of the message it expresses. The gentleman on my right jumps up, flips me off, starts swearing at me, and storms out of the shop. The other one got up and left as well. And I thought, that's crazy. Nobody's ever sworn at me like that before. They eventually filed a lawsuit against me with the state of Colorado. So everything turned on that conversation. This was Thursday afternoon that they came in, about 4:30, and by the time it closed at 6, I probably already had a half a dozen hateful phone calls, death threats, just all kinds of horrible things that a gentleman call me and say, you know, I'm coming to your shop, I've got a gun, and I'm gonna blow your head off. And then a Bible verse came to me, 2 Timothy 1:7, that says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And the sound mind part is what struck me. It's like, this isn't my fight, this is his. And from that moment till today, I'm still at peace with everything that's gone on. But I was surprised at how quickly things blew up.
Katie Faust was a pastor's wife living what she calls the safe and comfortable Christian life. But seeking a deeper faith and purpose, God called Katie to become a voice for the most vulnerable members of our society. And that's when Katie became an advocate for the rights of children.
So God led me on a journey of being able to confidently hear his voice. And he would do it through really high-risk requests. So one of them was when he told us to leave Spokane. And that didn't make any sense to me because I had put the roots down deep. I thought we were gonna be there forever. And I was just mourning and grieving. But I knew clearly that we were supposed to leave. And then God told us to adopt Benjamin about 6 months after we got to Seattle. And it didn't make any sense to me. We didn't have enough money. The risk of adopting a son with special needs. And because he had tutored me to hear his voice, you know, I opened the Bible and I said, I'm gonna read till you talk to me about this. And I happened to be in Romans chapter 9, so I started reading, which says, I will call them my people who are not my people, and I will call them my beloved who is not my beloved. At that point, you know, you shut the Bible and you're like, all right, let's go. It was the death of my safe and comfortable Christian life. But I'm a talker, I'm not a writer. So God calling me to start writing about kids, God made it so clear. If you love me, you will now work to give a voice to the most vulnerable. That was not something I had ever done before. Like, I'm not a great writer. That was something that, a skill I had to learn. So it started as an anonymous blog because I am a chicken. And I didn't want them to come for me or my church or my kids, but I knew that God wanted me to start writing and speaking. And I knew, like he told me early on, this is gonna be beyond you. But I had no idea what that looked like. I just, after the kids went to bed, you know, I'd get on the computer and just write. And I would put it out there, you know, this thing that I had poured myself into, and it would get 7 views. But it allowed me to figure out, oh, this is an area where I need to learn more. And then I got to the place where I had a little more of a following, just because it was a very distinct voice. It was hard on the immovable, unbending realities of children and what they need in terms of marriage and family. It was sort of a distinct lane that I was inhabiting. And I never would have thought of that myself. But it was at God's direction, because he had tutored me to hear his voice, because I understood that I needed to obey even if it didn't make sense. Even if I wasn't good at something, I was just supposed to do it.
Seth Dillon is the CEO of the Babylon Bee. Seth believes in the power of comedy and satire to deliver important truths in a world of relativism, wokeism, and censorship. But one joke got his company banned from Twitter.
So I grew up in the church, Sunday school and youth group, and listening to my dad preaching from the pews, and a complete Christian upbringing. The church is made up of imperfect people, including myself, including my own father, who was a pastor of the church. You know, we're all imperfect. What the satirist is really trying to do is, specifically the religious satirist, is speak truth into the culture using the method of humor. I quote Chesterton all the time, who said that humor can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle. The philosophy behind the Babylon Bee was, you know, people in positions of power need to be held accountable. Comedy is one of the most effective ways to do that. Tyrants hate mockery. And so one of the ways of holding them accountable is to make fun of their bad ideas and the stupid things that they say and do. Yes, it's to make jokes, it's to make people laugh, But there's also a sense in which it goes beyond that to confronting bad ideas so that they aren't taken seriously. You know, Twitter is really where most of the conversations are happening. We were part of the conversation, but they were trying to come after us by making all these rules about what you can and can't joke about. It's not just misinformation. There's topics that you can't make fun of. They're trying to safeguard people by protecting them from humor. USA Today published a headline about how Rachel Levine had been named their pick for Woman of the Year. But we look at that headline and it seems like comedy itself. You've got a man here who's dressed as a woman, and they're awarding this person Woman of the Year. Like, that's insane. It's certainly offensive to women, and it's kind of funny on its own. So we're looking at that and we're like, okay, well, you know, the project of satire really is to caricature things and to exaggerate them. How do we exaggerate this? Like, what do we do to caricature this? This feels like a caricature. And then one of our writers pitched the idea that we just name Rachel Levine our pick for Man of the Year. We knew that there was the possibility of a penalty if we told the joke. We also knew that it was a joke worth telling, and that the ones that they don't want you to tell are the ones that you need to be telling. The next thing you know, Twitter sent us a notification saying that we violated their hateful conduct policy, and we were locked out of our account, and we needed to delete that joke in order to restore access to our account.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali was born in Somalia during civil war. When her father was deemed a political criminal, the family fled to Saudi Arabia, and then Ethiopia, and finally, Kenya. There, she was introduced to fundamentalist Islam. Fear-based submission became her family's way of life. As a woman locked in a hopelessly controlling society, she found herself expected to submit to an arranged marriage with a Muslim man she didn't even know.
And I say, but I don't agree with you, Dad. I don't think this is the man I want to get married to. He's saying it's God's will. And there, you can't argue with God. You just submit and you obey. And so at the age of 22, I took a train to Amsterdam. I asked, how do I get to an asylum center? And within 4 weeks, the Dutch government gave me refugee status, which is a permanent status. And I never looked back. I wrote this letter to my father explaining why I made the choice and apologizing and saying, I know I shamed you, I know I've broken the codes, I know all of these things, but I did it for this reason, and forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. And he took a red pen, he cursed me and he disowned me and called me some really ugly names. And so in 2002, I remember concluding, I'm not a Muslim. Life is just this. It's what you live. This is it. Make the most of it.
Ayaan loved the freedom and empowerment she found in the West. For her, Western civilization was remarkably different than her earlier experience, and she dedicated her life to political education. Eventually, she was elected to the Dutch parliament and soon became an outspoken critic of Islam.
I remained in public critical of Islam, going from one television show to the next television show, talking about these things. This is going to get you killed.
While in Parliament, Ayaan collaborated with Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh on a film titled Submission, which exposed and critiqued Islam's oppression of women. After the film's release, a fatwa was issued, and Van Gogh was brutally murdered on the streets of Amsterdam by a radical Islamist. With the knife that was plunged into Van Gogh's body was a note that also contained death threats for Ayaan. As a result, she went into hiding and relocated to the U.S.
When I was being rolled in, I was just nervously babbling my doctor's ears off. And I remember looking in the back corner of the room, and there was this young male nurse. He had this look of horror on his face the whole time. And I think retrospectively, I now recognize that that's the face of like, I'm doing this to a kid? I was not quite old enough yet to drive a car, but I could get my perfectly healthy breast removed. It was not an easy process to deal with or cope with at all. Something changed the day of surgery, and as soon as I woke up, and as soon as I went home, and once I had the stitches taken out, and I had to start taking care of the wounds, and looking down at that area of my chest, that area of my body, and what was left of my breast every single day, it was horrific. I was taking a class in psychology at this point in time, and the end of the course was very focused on family, and particularly children and how they develop from infancy. And one particular lesson involved breastfeeding. And then I had this moment of like, what have I done to myself? This is beautiful. This is incredible. I'm never gonna be able to do it. It woke up something in me, where I began to feel like real, genuine grief and regret just flooding through like a storm. I began to miss the femininity I once had, not just my breasts, but also being able to wear makeup, have long hair, wear flowy dresses and clothing, feeling pretty. Some of the simpler things about womanhood I really just dearly missed. It was like, okay, I'm already like 4 years into this, so there's no going back now, is there?
And then I had different people telling me that, this is a case that will go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Like, seriously? To the U.S. Supreme Court? Doesn't the Constitution protect my right to live according to my freedom, to freely exercise my faith? But eventually we did get to the U.S. Supreme Court. So the day that I heard that the court was going to hear my case, I was here in the shop, and I was on my computer, and there's a website that I've become familiar with called SCOTUS Blog. And so I'm looking at the screen, waiting, and suddenly I see 5 words on there. It's like, Masterpiece Cake Shop has been granted. 6 years later, it still gets me. That chokes me up. That day, I couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't call anybody and say, hey, guess what? The Supreme Court's hearing our case. And it finally got my voice back where I could talk, and the only one that I could tell that was here was a homeless guy who comes in occasionally. So I told him, I get to go to the Supreme Court. And one of my attorneys told me, no, the worst that could happen is that they grant your case and you lose. And I think it was at that point that I realized how much larger this was than me and my cake shop, that this case represented every American. Because free speech is for everyone. And if I lose my rights, if they can take away my rights, they can take them away from anybody and or everybody. And I realized that what God has called us to do is so much larger than what I initially thought.
I spent a couple years blogging anonymously. That allowed me to work out a lot of the problems in my arguments and identify the holes in my worldview around marriage and family in relative obscurity. So I didn't necessarily hit, the national scene or start writing amicus briefs right off the bat. I had a couple years to just write blog posts. There was a blogger with a massive following, really smart guy, great writer. I had uploaded some picture of myself, and he was able to look at that image and trace it back to an IP address, which happened to be Ryan's computer at church. So he realized that Ryan was my husband, and then he doxed, not me, he doxed the home community leaders of my church. He published the names and addresses of a lot of the major leaders of our church. And in essence, like you need to stop blogging. He literally said, take down your blog and I'll take down the names. It was hard for me to continue if somebody said something mean or said something untrue or a lie about me, but I learned to get over it. But when they target your friends, when they come for your kids, when they write negative Yelp reviews for your church, they are tanking the reputation of the sweetest people. That's the kind of thing that, for me at least, made me go, okay, you got me, I'll totally stop. I won't do this anymore.
And so that prompted us a decision that we needed to make. Like, at this stage, do we now censor ourselves and take down the joke in order to continue posting on Twitter, which at the time, we had 1.4 million followers. It was a big audience and it drove a lot of traffic for us. They could take it down if they wanted to. That's up to them. This is their platform. But they wanted us to take it down. And we're like, no, we're not gonna delete it. We're gonna come what may, we're gonna stand by this joke. And it could mean that we never tweet again. We just lose access to our Twitter following. But at some point, if no one's willing to push back on that because they don't wanna lose access to their following, then the tyrants win. Then they gain control. They only gain more power when we give them more power, instead of trying to take it back by saying, no, I'm not gonna be strong-armed like that. I won't be on this platform if that's how it's going to be. And I put out a statement saying that we weren't going to delete it. We had to make a decision. This is gonna cost us something personally, but this is bigger than us. Somebody has to be willing to take a stand. We have to be able to talk about the issues. We have to be able to joke about them. We have to be able to debate what's true rather than having that dictated to us by the powers that be. And so I worried, is the B big enough? Does it matter enough that people are really gonna care? And right in the middle of me worrying about that, we got a message. It was funny because when you're locked out of your account, you can see messages, you just can't reply to them. So we had this message from Elon that we couldn't respond to. And we're like, Elon Musk is trying to get in touch with us, what do we do? Well, there was nothing we could do because we couldn't message him. And the only way to unlock that and message him would be to delete that tweet.
I was very, very hostile to religion in general. For me, the main reason I became atheist was because I thought that's where you find true tolerance. And to my surprise, years later, I find atheist people becoming really intolerant. I was mocking people of faith with my atheist friends. And when we weren't making fun of religion, we were condemning religion because it was a tool for people who wanted power. I criticized the treatment of women in Islam. I criticized Islam's terrorists and terrorism. In the meantime, the FBI is coming every so often to say there's this active plot against your life. These people don't forget. It doesn't matter how long you live, sooner or later they'll get you. These are the thoughts that are going through my head, and it's really escalating. And then I met my husband and I had a family, and then I started to feel afraid that something I didn't have before in those years, now I had, and that would be taken away from me. But not only that, the fear, the sense of terror, the regret, the guilt, the shame. And I was really, really afraid. And I just had this fire hose of negative thoughts churning in my head, not letting up. I became very unhappy. And I was managing these thoughts through drinking. It was a glass of wine, it was 2 glasses of wine. I would need more and more of it. I was really turning into an alcoholic. I was coming to depend on alcohol to manage the discomforts, the depression in my head.
So I made the choice to detransition. I went off hormones cold turkey. I never wanted to look at the syringe ever again. My decision was not one that was made with any sort of religious intentions or beliefs in mind, because at the time I was completely agnostic. I was in deep, deep suffering. And I started to think, if there's a God out there, he's got to absolutely hate me. I pretty much believed that up until the end of my transition and those feelings began to go away. It wasn't until I began speaking out publicly that I started going on this advocacy journey, that I've connected with a bunch of different Christians, both individuals and groups and churches and pastors and other leaders who have not only given me a place of comfort where I know I'm loved and appreciated, but also have challenged me in my old beliefs and have guided me to the truth. God has been using all of it to strengthen me into the woman who I am now. And it's that newfound faith that gives me a reason to fight. I used to be afraid to speak my mind. My faith in him has given me the strength and the discernment and understanding and compassion that I need. He has called me to put an end to the gender ideology movement.
We didn't know what day the decision would be released. You never know on any given case. My sister had called me and asked if I was following SCOTUS blog. Well, not really, because I'm not expecting a decision for a while. But then I turned on SCOTUS blog and suddenly we have our decision announced on SCOTUS blog that, we had won and the decision was 7-2. I found out by myself in the shop, and so I'm texting people, and then as I'm able to collect myself, people are coming in one at a time, two at a time. They're driving by the shop, they're honking, they're cheering. It was a really fun day. So. On a day-to-day basis around here, we never know what to expect, but we do know that God expects us and empowers us to be faithful to him. So that's what we want to do. No matter who comes in the door, who calls us on the phone, what kind of cake they order, or how they want to treat us, or whatever, we want to be faithful and gracious and show God's love. You have to stand by your faith, and God is fully capable of taking responsibility for my obedience.
So I went to the elders of my church and I just apologized, like on the verge of tears, you guys, I'm so sorry, I can't believe this. And that, our Sweet Home community leaders are made to pay because I've got this little side calling that I do after the kids go to bed. And I'll totally stop if you want me to. I'm so sorry that I've brought this upon the church. And the men kind of looked around the table and said, or you could keep going. What this blogger tried to do, which was totally take me out, actually enlarged my platform 100-fold. Once I was writing under my own name, I'm like, oh, I could do an interview with you. Oh, I can lead a workshop at the United Nations. Oh, I can go to Australia or South Korea and advocate on behalf of children in front of you. I can submit that amicus brief to the Supreme Court. It wasn't just marriage. It was topics of divorce. It was the rise of cohabitation. It was big fertility, sperm and egg selling, where children were losing their mother or father at the moment of conception. It was surrogacy that allows for custom-ordered designer babies to be shipped worldwide. It was adoption that was skewing to be more adult-centric rather than being about the best interest of the child. Like, in all of these different topics, who was representing the kids? It's devastating for kids when we get these questions wrong, and yet every single conversation, the personal and the political, were obsessively focused on what adults wanted, their feelings, their identity, their desires. It was always the kids who suffered when we got it wrong. Somebody needed to formally represent kids in the culture and in the courtroom, and so, you know, we started them before us in 2018.
And then we get a call from a number we don't know, and it's Elon Musk. He dug up our number and called and wanted to talk to us about this situation. He's like, I heard that you were suspended. Why not just delete it to get your account back? What's the big deal? What's the harm in that? And we explained our rationale there, that it's a principle thing. You know, like, we have to be willing to stand by this and say we should have the right to tell jokes, especially jokes that carry the truth in them. That should be something that we're allowed to do in the public square. And if we're not allowed to do it here, that's a problem that needs to be dealt with. And he agreed with that wholeheartedly. At the end of the conversation, he closed it out. He goes, I might just need to buy Twitter. From his perspective, comedy should be legal. You should be allowed to tell jokes in the public square. It's hard to get your hopes up that something like that might happen, that the world's richest man might end up bailing you out of Twitter jail. Finally, he closes the deal, and then his first day as CEO, literally day one, he sends me a DM at 4 a.m. that said, do you want the Babylon Bee restored? There will be no censorship of humor.
And I agreed to go to a rehab center. But when I get there and I talk to this wonderful therapist, she says, I really think what you're going through is spiritual emptiness. It's spiritual bankruptcy. AA has 12 steps, and step 1, 2, and 3 is this total surrender. And in that process, prayer, writing down the qualities of God, it just strikes me, this figure I'm describing is the figure of Jesus Christ. Then I decide I am going to pray to Christ, and something clicked, and I felt connected, and I felt as if someone was listening to my prayers. Just a sense of peace, deep peace and calm. And at that moment, I understood I'm not going to drink again. Something changed, something real, for me, very real changed, and very dramatic. And I felt reconnected with my husband, reconnected with my children. No more pills. I don't take any medication. I don't know how to explain it other than to say it is real for me. Life is so good. And it's a miracle.
I'm incredibly grateful that I've been given this purpose. I have this gift now that allows me to transform all of the pain that I have been through and all the pain that my family has been through to help others.
There certainly is an all-out war right now on reality, reason, truth, and there are many people who are starting to wake up and realize this.
Before all this legal stuff started, I can tell you I was sleepwalking through my faith. This has given me the impetus or the courage to share my faith.
And if you are willing to stand up, there will be other people who are inspired by that and actually take action and do something about it.
All my life, I craved freedom and I craved love. In Jesus Christ, I have found both.
The high-risk Christian life is genuinely high risk. But you get to see God's hand working through you in ways that are jaw-dropping.
I firmly believe that there's a spiritual war that's happening behind the scenes of all of these kinds of conflicts. And I think that our culture right now is a spiritual desert. I think that people are thirsty.
Because it's good news, and people want good news these days. And that good news is the love that God showed us through his son, Christ.
There is no my truth or your truth. I've come to the conclusion that Jesus is the truth.
For me, surrender to the teachings of Christ means ultimate freedom. So I am finally free.
My dear John, like the great man who penned this book, we have been called by God to our own moment in history. And in answering that call, we will find the fullest purpose and meaning for our lives. And may we live and work boldly for no other accomplishment than to one day hear the caller declare, "Well done." And now, just as I have tried in my own time, I challenge you in your generation to continue in firm conviction with the task that the Lord has given you. I'm expecting great things. All the very best, Oz.
Oz has described our destiny as either our replacement, our decline, or our renewal. Well, as for me and my house, I choose renewal. We're experiencing the most rapid social change in human history. At this civilizational moment, it's time for us to choose. It's time to act. This is not a time to sit on the sidelines. So how then do we live? Well, here's what I know for certain. Love God, follow Christ, know what is true, be a person of hope, discover what God has called you to, and join this battle. Help and encourage other believers to embrace their calling. Be bold, persevere, love your neighbor, hold your family close, pray continually, and just watch what God will do. And remember, you were called to this moment.
All right, we'll go ahead and stop it there. That's the end of it anyway. Again, thank you for your patience, but I'm glad we got through these stories. Friends, these are really some moving and incredible stories that we kind of got to see put inside of this context. I've given you some information about some of these individuals. I was going to walk through some of them specifically so that you all get a little bit better picture of who they are, where you might be able to find them if you want to kind of follow up on some of their stuff and what they do. John Stonestreet, the narrator essentially of that last half, is the president of the Colson Center. I think some of us have actually done some work with the Colson Center. It's a long-running Christian worldview organization. You can look them up, colsoncenter.org, and find a lot of really good information on them there. Some of the other stories as well, being here in the state of Colorado, many of us know. Do we have those slides yet? No slides. All right. Nice. No lights. So this will be good. This is an exciting evening, friends. Oh, there we go. We've got something there. Before we talk about Jack Phillips, Chloe Cole, what an incredible story hers is. And she started hitting the scene as a detransitioner, and since then, just in the last couple of years, she has come out publicly with her profession of faith. One of our friends here at the church, Danny Huerta with Focus on the Family, did a long, hour-and-a-half, 2-hour-long interview with her that you can find through Focus on the Family as well. Part of what she said, and just a few of the things that struck me that these individuals said, that the journey that she has been on, she now considers a gift. The pain that she and her family went through is now a gift that God has given her to say the things that she wants to say, the platform that she has now. I think it's very powerful for her in that position, with as young as she is, to say, God has called me to end the gender transition movement. I mean, that's a really powerful thing for someone like Chloe Cole to say. Jack the Baker Phillips, we got to spend a little bit of time with a small group while he told his story in a little bit more of an intimate setting. And he is an absolutely incredible individual, very soft-spoken, very quiet individual, and still someone that God used through that scenario in a really powerful way. So one of the interesting connections between a couple of these stories, Jack Phillips' story and the story of Ayaan Hirsi Ali, that just continues to floor me every time I watch this or sort of look her up and pay attention to her stuff. She's still very outspoken out there. You can still find a lot of her stuff. She runs a podcast. But she had been an outspoken atheist for a long time. And so when she publicly made the statement, and the first way she put it is she had become culturally Christian. She saw the value of the Christian faith in Western civilization. She had rejected Islam. She was then rejecting atheism, and publicly on the stage with Jack Phillips's lawyers from ADF, she makes the statement, I am now culturally Christian. And what put me over the tipping point was watching Jack Phillips and his story. His demeanor, his behavior, what happened, how it unfolded, what people were trying to do to him. And since then, she's made this bold proclamation as a follower of Jesus Christ, going through AA and so on and so forth. Just an absolutely dramatic story. One of the things I find interesting between Jack Phillips and Katie Faust. So Katie Faust feels like a force of nature to me when I watch her and when I listen to her. And so you have this individual who God used through doxing. So someone else finds you online, they don't like you, so they publish your private personal information online so that other people can harass you and your family and your circle of people. That's what doxing means. So that was intended to push her back, and of course it just gives her this international launch pad for what she does, advocating on behalf of children. Her organization is called Them Over Us. So that's where you can find some more of her work if you kind of want to follow what Katie Faust does. Here's part of what I find so encouraging about these sets of stories is that you have this very quiet, retiring man. He's an entrepreneur. He has one shop. He doesn't have 1,000, shops around the U.S. that he's managing. He's just a dude with his shop doing his artwork, and God uses him in this very powerful way. Then you've got this gal who just apparently has endless energy. She starts advocating on behalf of children, and then God just kind of thrusts her onto this international scene. The way that God uses us is incredible. You don't have to be that individual who has the international stage and the energy of 3 or 4 superhuman individuals. You can also be somebody who just runs one little shop and you just want to be an artist and want to be a faithful Christian. And God still is using that in a very powerful way. And turns out nobody knew until she said so. It is part of the conversion story of someone like Ayaan Hirsi Ali. So it's very encouraging stuff. And then, of course, the story of the Babylon Bee. Elon Musk contacts you in the middle of the night, says, do you want your account back? So one of the wealthiest men in the world, not a Christian, but who uses his resources for the right kinds of things and opens this door back up. So their story of free speech versus censorship and tyranny. Some of what he said, I thought that was so powerful. He made the statement that, well, someone has to stand up to the tyrant, because if you give in to the tyrant, you just give them more power all the time. So we just had to stand up. We weren't going to do that, right? And of course, things work out for them because of this crazy connection. One of the things that Jack Phillips said that I thought was just really moving, and we may have missed it because the screen was flashing, but in part of his story, he said, I just realized that I could trust God with my faithfulness. That God is big enough to handle my obedience. So I'm just going to obey. I'm going to do what I know is right in this moment. And God's going to take care of the rest. And in his situation, that's how it turned out. Some of the big ideas I wanted to just very briefly touch on. These are going to be some of the ideas that we start unpacking over the next several weeks, but these come directly out of these stories that we watched tonight. And the first is the public value of religious liberty and free speech. Jack Phillips also made the statement that he realized early on that his case was a case that belonged to every American. So if he lost his case, if someone could take his ability to express his religious beliefs, his capacity of free speech away from him, they could take it away from anybody. So to be able to stand up for his own speech and liberty in that moment was effectively him being able to stand up for everybody else in that moment. The power of religious liberty and free speech is more significant than we might think. It's at the very foundation of Western society as it's been created by the Judeo-Christian tradition. And so we're going to get a chance to unpack that. Those who disagree and where this comes from, what Scripture has to say about this, it is a very powerful thing. Something else I found really interesting about these stories is the irresistible power of God's created order. So we have a lot of loud voices in our culture right now that are doing everything they can to deny reality itself. If we go through enough hormonal, chemical, and surgical changes, we can change you from a girl to a boy. That's a flat out denial of reality, not just biological reality, but psychological and spiritual reality as well. And you may remember she said as part of her story, she was in a class talking about childhood development, and she realized that what had been taken from her was beautiful. God's created order cut through everything that she had been told by therapists and social media, and it made a difference, and it started this other path for her. Some of these others reached that same moment, and we're going to talk about that. The power of God's created order. There is an actual phrase for this. It's just called natural law. Natural law means how God has hardwired himself into the universe. And that we as human beings, because God has created us to know him, we have direct access to God's hardwiring of the universe. And no matter how much we work against that, it will always win. And so these individuals who begin to see that start coming around. There's a phrase that's becoming more and more popular now that fit into the stories like Chloe Cole's and Ayaan Hirsi Ali's. A phrase that you'll see sometimes is that someone is labeled a reality respecter. So that's an interesting phrase. It's somebody who for a very long time has been on the progressive side of things. They have been atheistic or agnostic, or they didn't care about religion, but they were leftist in their politics. And now what they're watching happen is so crazy that they are coming to this realization that this is anti-reality. So, hey, here we go. Let's just start all over tonight. I have a confidence monitor. You guys can't see what I see. But this is interesting because now people, in what they're writing and in what they're saying and podcasting and speeches, they're beginning to literally recognize that the group that they've been a part of for a very long time has gone completely off the reservation. And reality is just different. And what people are beginning to recognize now is that when you see a reality respecter, it turns out that they're probably on this path. They don't know it yet, but they're probably on Chloe Cole's path. They're probably on Ayaan Hirsi Ali's path. She goes from Muslim to staunch atheist to someone who's been told that she's dealing with spiritual bankruptcy to someone who comes to full faith in Jesus Christ. I've been searching for love and freedom my entire life, and now I am free, right? And it started with someone who was what's now called a reality respecter. The social contagion of bad ideas. So ideas have consequences, bad ideas have victims. So this was part of Chloe Cole's story. She's young, she's on social media. The algorithm is feeding her these ideas over and over and over. The therapist tells her family there's no option but transition or she's going to kill herself. So this has been the line now for several years. There's no data behind it. It's absolutely false statistically, but this is the line that's being fed. And of course, she walks through this terrible process. The social contagion of bad ideas. Trans, queer, their woke cult ideas we talked about a little bit last time. And then just this notion that truth itself is universal. There's no getting around it. No matter what we do, this is just how God has built the universe. So this passage of Scripture, I want to leave us with a couple of thoughts here. God has literally put you here and now by his sovereign decree. Acts 17:26. For from one man he has made every nationality to live over the whole earth, and has determined their appointed times and the boundaries of where they live. When and where you and I live has been ordained by God. So we are literally here now in this situation to take stock of what all of this means, what our role in all of this is then, what is our calling in our circumstance, right? So part of what was said there at the end by John Stonestreet, know God, love truth, pray continually, know your calling, join the battle. This is a lot of what I want to do over the next few weeks, is not just talk about some of these facts and details and how important these things have been to the civilization that we've been given, but to our own lives as well and what God has called us to do, whatever our circumstance is right now. So, some of you, maybe many of you, have about 7 o'clock tonight, you've received an email from us asking you to take a very short survey. It's literally a 3-question survey. If you have not received that email, we're going to leave this QR code up because I would like to get your feedback. The survey is very easy. Having now watched this documentary, and we've talked about it just a little bit, I would like to know a couple of things. First of all, as a result of this, what would you like to know? Has something sort of piqued in your interest? Is there something been said or talked about? You thought, I don't know anything about this. I would love to know more about this thing, or how does this work, or how does this work? How do we do this moving forward? Those kinds of things. The second question just then is, what do you want to do because of it? Has something been stirred inside of you and you're thinking to yourself, well, I want to do something. How do I do this? What do I do? Where do I start? What does it mean to think about what has God called me to do? Why am I here and now? Those kinds of questions. So very simple questions for you guys to answer for me would be phenomenal. And then every survey has to have that last question that goes, and just whatever else you wanted to say. So keep it nice, keep it PG, right? It's all just anonymous. It's just information we receive, and it will just help craft the next few weeks as we kind of reflect on this, deal with these issues. I've got a few things in my head, but I want to make sure that we're scratching where everybody is itching, and we deal with this in really effective ways. Sound good? Thank you again. Thank you again to our tech team running around, taking care of things. We had a computer crash, so we had to grab a laptop. We didn't have the connections, but we made it. You guys are good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, again, we are grateful for this time together tonight. And Lord, may these kinds of things stir in our hearts and minds. May we be drawn to these kinds of questions about what Osgenis has called our civilizational moment. What's going on around us? What's the role of the church? What are our roles inside of this? As we choose renewal as well, what does that mean? And then, Father, these stories as well, may they sort of ring in our hearts and minds as encouragement. People who just a few years ago, we would have looked at them and we would have thought, oh my goodness, there's just no hope for this. This is someone who is publicly opposed to my faith. I don't know what to do with this person. And yet, Lord, through your grace and your power, we've watched these stories of transformed lives, of doors that have been opened because of you. In your grace, Lord, maybe we be encouraged by these things. May we find the right kind of Christian hope in these things as well. And God, we just ask your blessing and grace upon our time together over the next several Tuesday nights. In your wonderful name we ask it, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for putting up with this, and thanks for being with us.